how they lifted those stones, how they brought them up to that level. I think we're looking, again, at a lost technology. This thing is just a gigantic mystery.
After several attempts, they were unable to demonstrate how this would be done.
Throughout history, there have been mysterious structures that seem impossible to explain.
How gigantic stones were moved into place as if by magic.
From this weird underwater rock structure in Japan that looks like an abandoned city to a series of massive coffin-shaped boxes in Egypt, these odd formations continue to puzzle experts. What were they for, and who built them? Let's start with this mysterious building that scared even scientists. Temple of Ain Dara. If there is one place that will give you a shiver just from looking at it, it's this temple in Syria. The ancient temple, known as Ain Dara, has a mystery that's been puzzling people for thousands of years. And it all starts with a couple of massive footprints right at the entrance. We are not talking about normal-sized prints either. These things are enormous, and no one can quite agree on how they got there. For over 3,300 years, these footprints have been part of the temple, and their origins. Well, that's up for debate. Some experts argue that the people who built the temple also carved the footprints. Why? To show the gods entering the temple and moving toward the inner sanctum.
Was Serapis, and the Seraphim was the place where you go pray for that specific god.
It's a pretty grand way of saying the gods were here. Then there's another idea floating around. Inside the temple, there is a carving of a goddess, Ishtar, the goddess of fertility. Some people think the temple was made for her and the footprints belonged to her as she stepped into the sacred space. But others aren't so sure about that. They say the Assyrians, who showed up much later, could have added her image. So maybe those footprints don't belong to her after all. On top of all that, you have got local legends spinning a whole different tale. Some say a giant god with clawed feet left the marks, while others believe the temple builders were giants themselves. And there are stories out there claiming these giants actually lived in the area back in the day, which, according to the believers, makes those footprints all the more legit. Despite all this ancient history, the temple faced a new kind of threat not too long ago. In 2018, a Turkish air raid badly damaged the site, but somehow those mysterious footprints survived. It's almost like they were meant to stick around, just to keep us guessing. But even as we marvel at these ancient steps, something else awaits us in the continent of South America called Puma Punu. What if I told you there was a temple built thousands of years ago with stones heavier than anything we can move today? That's Puma Punu, a mysterious site high in the Andes mountain. This weird-sounding place is part of an ancient temple in Bolivia, and it holds more mysteries than your average history book lets on. Now, what makes this place fascinating isn't just its history, but the sheer mystery of how it was built.
These are the mysterious ruins of Puma Punu.
We are talking about a site 12,800 feet above sea level, where even breathing isn't easy. Yet somehow, around 1,400 years ago, people managed to haul stones that weighed up to 131 tons. Yeah, you heard that right. Here is where it gets even more bizarre. There are no trees up there. That means they didn't have wooden rollers to move these massive rocks like people did in other parts of the world. So what was their trick? Maybe they had some kind of forgotten technique, or who knows, maybe something stranger. And the engineering. These ancient builders weren't just slapping stones together. The blocks at Puma Punu are carved with perfect precision.
Everything is so precise, everything is so perfect. You wonder how any of this was even possible.
We are talking about cuts so clean and shapes so exact, it's like the stones were sliced by a laser.
And the immense size of these blocks is so incredible.
Oh, and did we mention some of the stones are magnetic? Makes you wonder what kind of knowledge they had back then. But hey, before we start imagining time-traveling architects or ancient alien helpers, let's shift gears to another mind-blowing wonder known as Masuda-no-Inafune. In a small village in Japan, there are massive, mysterious stone structures scattered around that make you wonder if the past was as simple as we think. This village, Asuka, has its roots going back to ancient times, around 250 AD. Among the 20 strange stone structures there, one stands out more than the rest. It's called Masuda-no-Inafune, or as some like to say, the rock ship.
I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
It's not some small boulder either. The thing is 11 meters long, 8 meters wide, and nearly 5 meters high, and it weighs 800 tons. Good luck trying to figure out how people back then even moved it. Now nobody knows what these structures were for. Some people guess that Buddhists might have carved them, given that the area is filled with shrines and temples. It seems like a good guess, but there's one problem. This rock ship doesn't look anything like the usual Buddhist architecture.
It would actually predate Buddhism in Japan, so it wouldn't have anything to do with Buddhist temples.
Right.
So what's the deal with this giant stone, sitting in a village that's been around for over 1,000 years? Was it part of some forgotten religious ritual, or was it meant for something completely different? Your guess is as good as anyone's, really. But whatever the answer, the mystery of Aska still stands, just as solid as these massive stones used in building the city of Nan Madal.
I was born here, but every time I come up here, I'm always amazed, always.
Sometimes history throws us a puzzle that makes us rethink what's possible. Nan Madal is one of those puzzles. It's an ancient city, long abandoned, sitting quietly on a lagoon near Pohnpei's shoreline. The place is a maze of about 100 man-made islets spread over 150 acres. That's big enough to fit over 1,000 people comfortably. But the thing is, it was built using only massive stone columns, without any mortar holding things together.
Oh, this structure is for worship and burial for the king and queen.
Historians have scratched their heads over this one. They believe Nan Madal was a hub for the Saut-de-l'Eure chiefs, who used it to keep an eye on their rivals. Instead of letting people stay in their own districts, the chiefs made them live in the city, where they could be more easily controlled. Smart move if you think about it. But how they built it is another question entirely.
After several attempts, they were unable to demonstrate how this would be done.
Some stories say giant birds carried the basalt columns into place. Imagine that, gigantic birds swooping in to help with construction. The reality, though, is still a bit of a mystery. What's clear is that it must have taken a serious effort, both in terms of resources and people, to create something this massive. Some people have even gone as far as to claim Nan Madal might be part of the lost continents of Lemuria or Mu. It sounds wild, but when you see the size of those stones, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. And speaking of imagination, it's not just Nan Madal that stretches the limits of what seems possible. Another place is the ruins of Sakai Haman. As you explore the Peruvian landscape, there are places where history simply doesn't add up.
Sakai Haman, or Saksa Uma.
And Sakai Haman is a perfect example of that. Located on the outskirts of Cusco, Sakai Haman was once part of the Inca capital, but not much of the original complex is left. Today, most of the complex is in ruins, but the walls that still stand are enough to make anyone stop and stare.
And this is the largest polygonal wall in the Americas.
The Inca walls are built with massive boulders. Each one is oddly shaped, yet they fit together perfectly, like pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle. The stones are so tightly packed that not even a needle could slip between them.
And the fit, even to this day, is so fine that only moss.
Some of the walls stretch up to 6 meters tall, and the longest one is 400 meters. It's hard to believe how the Incas managed to get these giant boulders to fit so snugly without mortar. When the Spanish came to Cusco, they were so amazed by the walls that they assumed only demons could have built them. In their excitement to take them down, they tried to destroy the walls, but most of the boulders were just too heavy for them to move. So how exactly did the Incas do it? Historians and scientists are still clueless. The way they shaped and moved these enormous stones remains a mystery. What is even more impressive is that they managed to construct these walls without the help of modern tools or machinery. It's something that makes you wonder if the Incas weren't ahead of their time. And just like Sakai Haman holds its secrets tight, there are plenty more clues about the Inca world hidden all over Peru, like the Moray Terraces. Farming is a simple, everyday task that most of us take for granted, but the Incas appeared to have taken things to the next level with this incredible structure. About 50 kilometers northwest of Cusco, Peru, the Moray Terraces stand as one of the most mysterious Inca ruins.
So it looks like there's probably about 20 of these terraces, and they're in a circular shape.
The terraces are arranged in a circular pattern, like a giant amphitheater, with each level descending further into a deep depression. The biggest terraces are in the center, and they drop a massive 150 meters to the bottom. What's even more mind-blowing is how the bottom of this structure is designed. It's so well drained that no matter how much it rains, water can't gather there. The rain just disappears into the ground. But the really cool part is the temperature difference. At the top of the terraces, the air is much colder than at the bottom. In fact, the temperature difference can be as much as 15 degrees Celsius. This change in temperature creates what's known as microclimates, or small controlled weather zones within the terraces.
The weather is limestone, so
it seeps. Yeah.
Penetrate the limestone at the bottom.
It's like nature's version of a greenhouse. Some experts believe that the Incas used these temperature variations to experiment with crops and see how they would grow under different conditions. So while no one knows for sure, it's widely believed that the Moray Terraces were used for farming. Soil samples from the site even suggest that the Incas brought in dirt from other regions to help their crops thrive in different climates. Imagine having a whole bunch of mini-climates for farming, all thanks to a few clever terraces. So, while the Moray Terraces leave us marveling at ancient architectural genius, there are other mysterious finds that seem to defy any easy explanation, such as
you'll see these Inca stairs built into all the different terraces all around Peru.
The black boxes of the Serapeum, Sakara. We've all heard stories about hidden treasures, but how about something that seems a little out of this world? Near the pyramids of Giza, archaeologists stumbled upon something so strange they are unlike anything you would expect from ancient Egypt. 24 coffin-shaped black boxes were discovered in a hillside cave at Sakara, right next to the Pyramid of Djoser. They are not your regular boxes, though. These aren't made from wood or any easy-to-work material. No, these are solid Aswan granite. Each box weighs over 100 tons. And even more mind-blowing is the way the boxes were made. They are airtight, so it's clear they served some important purpose. But what? And why were there exactly 24 of them? What really gets the experts talking is how these boxes were crafted. The lids alone weigh around 30 tons each, and the cutting is so precise that it looks like the work of a machine. In fact, it's so flawless that some experts believe these might not have been made by Egyptians at all. Instead, they wonder if these were left behind by an alien race, and the Egyptians just found them and claimed them as their own. The boxes have a few hieroglyphics on them, but they are so poorly done that they are considered more like scribbles than anything meaningful. So no one really knows who made them or why. But one thing's for sure, it adds to the many unanswered questions about ancient Egypt. A couple of coffin-shaped boxes might sound creepy, but then there is the 11 rock-hewn churches of Libella. If you think churches are just regular buildings, think again. In Libella, Ethiopia, you will find a mystery that will leave you in awe. Libella is home to 11 ancient churches, each carved out of a single giant rock. Located on a plateau in Ethiopia at 8,000 feet, these churches are like nothing else on Earth. Forget about bricks, mortar, or wood. The builders worked only with stone to carve these monolithic structures. What's even more amazing is that these churches are not just built on top of the earth, but go 40 to 50 feet below the surface. There is no shortage of theories about how these churches came to be. The most widely accepted story is that in the 12th century, King Libella ordered the construction of these places of worship. The local museum at the site even promotes this idea, but all it has for evidence is an old farming tool that looks more suited to tilling soil than cutting stone. It doesn't seem to match the scale of such an amazing feat.
We're here at the most famous church here in Libella, St. George's Church.
But the people who still come here to worship believe the story doesn't end there. They say that King Libella didn't do it alone. Some claim he had help, an army of angels no less, who came down to lend a hand and finished all 11 churches in just one night. It's a tale as bold as the carvings themselves. But when you stand there with the cool stone beneath your feet and the echoes of prayer around you, it's hard not to feel that maybe, just maybe, there is a hint of truth to it. The churches are still alive with activity today. People gather there daily for worship, prayer, and to celebrate religious festivals. The site has become a place where people come together, strengthening the spiritual bond and connection that has been there for centuries. Before we continue with the rest of the video, let's take a look at the Subscriber's pick. The image we are looking at shows a mysterious structure that appears to be ancient. The stone walls have precise carvings and cool patterns, leading down a passage to a small doorway at the end. The steps and carvings suggest an advanced level of skill, perhaps beyond what we typically associate with ancient civilizations. This mysterious building scared even scientists. The weirdest part is that no one is really sure where this place is, or if it even exists at all. Some say it could be a real lost ancient site, while others think it might just be a digital creation or a model of a forgotten place. Nobody really knows what it was used for either. Was it a place for rituals, a clever way to store water, or something else entirely? What do you think? Could this be a hidden piece of history, or just a big mystery we're never going to solve? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Borab Buddha. Not every ancient wonder gives up its secrets easily, and Borab Buddha is no exception. Even today, this massive temple in Indonesia keeps plenty of mysteries locked behind its stone walls. Built over 1,200 years ago, it's the world's largest Buddhist temple. Yet nobody really knows why it was made or who exactly called the shots. It's as if the Shailendra dynasty, who historians believe were behind its construction in the 8th century,
Borab Buddha was built in the 8th century, but it was abandoned right after that.
Decided to leave everyone guessing. The project was no small feat either. It took roughly 100 years to finish, and it wasn't just a simple layout. At first, the temple was supposed to be one gigantic stupa standing tall over 5 terrace levels. But somewhere along the way, the builders seemed to have second thoughts. Maybe they realized the whole thing was a bit too ambitious, fearing it could collapse under its own weight. So they changed the plan, adding 3 smaller stupa levels around a central dome. Now, if you were to look at it from above, it would look like a mandala, an ancient spiritual symbol. This resemblance has led some to wonder if there was an influence from Indian Buddhists when Borab Buddha was first dreamed up. The carvings and statues, over 500 in total, suggest it might have been a place for deep meditation. But again, that's just a guess. Then there's the central dome, a massive structure surrounded by 72 smaller stupas, each housing its own statue. The statues sit quietly inside, as if waiting for the world to figure out their purpose. And if that's not mysterious enough, there is an unfinished Buddha statue hidden inside the main stupa.
And originally 504 Buddha statues.
It's large and impressive, yet strangely incomplete, leaving visitors just plain confused about why it was left that way. And while this temple holds its secrets in full view, others bury theirs deep, just like the Longyu Caves. Imagine draining a pond only to stumble upon a treasure that had been buried for thousands of years. That is exactly what happened in the small village of Xi'an in China's Zhejiang province. For ages, locals told stories about mysterious caves beneath the town's waters. Nobody took it seriously, though, until one man decided to prove whether the tales were more than just myths. He rallied the villagers together, and they bought a huge hydraulic pump. After 17 days of non-stop pumping, the pond finally gave up its secrets. And what they found was jaw-dropping. At the bottom lay a network of hand-carved caves, hidden away for millennia. Today, archaeologists have uncovered more than 30 similar caverns throughout the area. These aren't your typical caves either.
And a really interesting fact is when they drained this first cave, there wasn't a single fish that was found.
They are carved out of solid siltstone and reach as deep as 30 meters underground. Despite all our fancy equipment and modern research techniques, we still have no idea how ancient builders managed such a feat. Even with the best tools of that time, experts say it would have taken 1,000 workers digging around the clock for years to finish the job. And then there is the mystery of the missing rubble. You would expect to find piles of stone nearby, right? After all, 1 million cubic meters of rock doesn't just vanish. Yet there isn't a single sign of the excavated stone anywhere. It's like the earth swallowed it whole. The caves themselves are nothing short of impressive. Even after standing for over 2,000 years, their walls, pillars, and ceilings remain strong and undamaged. It's like time forgot about this place. The real puzzle, though, is figuring out why they were made in the first place. Some experts suggest they could have been used as storage for grain or natural resources. Others think they might have served as royal ritual sites, shelters from invaders, or even ancient observatories for studying the stars. No one really knows for sure, and each new theory only adds to the mystery. Draining a pond to uncover ancient history is one thing, but trying to solve the secrets behind it all is a whole other story. Funny how the past can seem so close, yet its secrets remain just out of reach. Next up is GOC Circle. There is an ancient secret hidden in the fields of Germany, and it's older than the pyramids. Known as the GOC Circle, this mysterious site dates back to 4900 BC and was used for a couple of centuries. At first glance, it looks like a massive ditch about 75 meters across, but there's much more to it than a simple ring in the ground. The structure has 2 wooden palisade rings with carefully placed entrances. These openings line up perfectly with where the sun rises and sets during the winter solstice, and smaller gaps mark the same positions for the summer solstice. Because of this, some archaeologists think it might be the oldest solar observatory. The idea is that ancient people used it to track the sun's movements, but not everyone is convinced. Just mapping out the solstice points doesn't make it a full-blown observatory, some experts say. There is nothing else in the circle that clearly says, "Hey, I'm a giant sundial." But if it wasn't for stargazing, then what exactly was it for? Well, this is where things get a bit darker. The local group that looks after the GOC Circle suggests it was used for human sacrifice. It's not just a wild guess either. Archaeologists have found bones there, human bones, with cut marks on them. There is also evidence of ritual fires, which could mean some spooky ceremonies took place here. The fact that a structure from so long ago shows such precise knowledge of the sky has really puzzled scientists. How could people who lived before written history have figured out something so advanced? It's a question that doesn't have a clear answer, but one thing's for sure. This ancient circle is far from just a pile of dirt. Well, just like the builders of the mysterious circle, another civilization was reaching for the stars in a different part of the world. The Moai. There is a tiny island in the Pacific that is home to giant stone heads, which have puzzled historians for centuries.
How did they move these? Because you're talking about, tons and tons, and you don't have the modern equipment we have.
It is known as Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, and it is here that the Moai stand like silent giants, watching over the land. The Moai are impressive figures, carved from single blocks of stone. With oversized heads making up about 3/8 of their height, these statues are like the ancient ancestors of the island, frozen in time. Almost 1,000 Moai were crafted and moved around the island, while a similar number still rest at Rano Raraku, the quarry that supplied most of these impressive structures. One of the most remarkable Moai, named Paro, stands at 10 meters tall, which is about the height of a 3-story building. It weighs around 82 tons, which is heavy enough to make anyone's back hurt just thinking about it. But the heaviest recorded Moai is even more jaw-dropping, tipping the scales at 86 tons. And then there is an unfinished statue, which, if completed, would have reached a height of 21 meters. That's over 69 feet tall and would have weighed between 145 to 165 tons. When European settlers first arrived, they found the Rapa Nui people in a tough situation, sick and struggling to survive. It's hard to wrap your head around how these folks, who were struggling just to survive, managed to build such gigantic statues. It's no wonder people have all sorts of theories about how the Moai were created. Some think the Rapa Nui must have had help, whether from neighboring cultures or, as some like to imagine, visitors from beyond the stars. While those ideas might sound far-fetched, you can't help but wonder how they pulled it off. Something else that will make you question what is possible is Yonaguni Monument. Some places are so odd that even experts can't agree on whether they were built by humans or formed by nature. One such spot is the Yonaguni Monument, sitting quietly beneath the waters off the coast of Yonaguni, a small island in Japan. This underwater formation looks like a lost city, with columns, platforms, and even a massive pyramid, all stuck to the seabed. A lot of people argue that this monument is just a weird natural formation. They think the stones were cracked and shaped by earthquakes, and the water currents did the rest, creating what we now see as strange carvings. The pieces of rock, they say, were once part of a solid formation, but after shaking and moving around over time, they ended up looking like something made by human hands. They point to the parallel fractures and natural joints that seem to connect everything together. But not everyone is buying into that theory. One expert insists that humans must have been involved in creating the monument. According to him, the shapes of the structures are just too precise to have happened by accident. Some platforms even have perfectly round and triangular holes, which he believes couldn't have formed naturally. Plus, the sharp angles of the slabs don't look like the rounded edges you would expect from something that had been worn down by the sea. It's as if someone carefully carved these stones to fit together just right. The mystery of who or what made this monument still remains unsolved. Was it a civilization long forgotten, or did nature simply have a hand in creating something that looks too much like a masterpiece? The debate continues, but the Yonaguni Monument remains one of the most puzzling underwater sites in the world. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.